Hi there, this is Steve Wood, and this is our Ford GT project. We finally got this much ballyhooed piece. This is the suspension lift cylinder that we were talking about in prior videos. It attaches to two different pieces of the suspension with these eyelets. As you can see, the one eyelet on the back is made by Aurora, which is the same brand of Heim joints and spherical bearings I use. I like their quality very much. And the other end is kind of a formed piece of aluminum, and this whole piece was probably CNC machined. Now the problem was this broke in application on this car. As you can see, we have the piece right here with a little uptick on the end, and that would go right about there magically. See how that fits. So that means that this had a shock force applied to the front or applied from the bearing to the front that then made this part fail. We don't know exactly why it failed in practical application, but you can see from the metal, didn't look like that strong of a metal. I'm just not happy with the overall quality of the aluminum. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, tell me. But that's kind of interesting. But we're very thankful to our friends at Galpin Ford for getting this for us. We paid for it. And we're going to put it back in the car. I've got it sitting in here now with the about 400 different single-use O-rings and things for the engine and transmission that we had to have to be able to do the belt service on this. So the belt service, and we'll talk about it in other videos, is the engine oil pump drive belt and the main accessory belt. In order to change either one of those things, the transaxle has to come out the car. Other issues we had on the car, one of the taillight computers gave out, and that's primarily because the computer that controls the taillight signal got baked by exhaust heat. In continuing our Ford GT project, this is the transaxle. The mounts are definitely a very complicated affair. As you can see, we have an aluminum substructure that's linked by a bar that bolts in a few places on the chassis, and then these rubberized mounts that actually connect to the transaxle. And the most specific pieces of aluminum on the entire car are probably these things, which are the transmission bracket mounts from the transmission bracket to the mount to the chassis. That's probably a Ford GT only part, because this jet drag was also used in a model of Ferrari and a model of Mercedes. One of the reasons that we got all those little packets that you saw in the prior part of the video is to replace all these little O-rings and things. These are all single use from Ford, and we just like not to take the chances. We mark these in and out, although it's just about impossible to screw these things up, but we just want to make triple sure that we're actually not going to goof anything up on this. One thing that we found that was kind of obnoxious is even the car that is a 2018, the solenoids and the lines to the wing are already leaking. So gotta love that. So in earlier parts of the video, we're talking about the taillight computer had died. And that taillight computer basically broadcasts the signals off the CAN bus to and from the rear taillight assemblies, whether you're doing a turn signal, brake signal, hazard signal, and things like this. It's controlled by computer. And that computer sat right about there, right at the exit heat of two heat exchangers. So you can see that computer would get hot, 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 and expire. We're going to insulate the computer a little bit more than the factory. We're going to grin and bear it and hope it works out. As we talked before, the main accessory belt actually goes through the bell housing, as you can see here, and in order to service the main accessory belt and the oil pump drive belt, which is below, which we can't see here, you have to unbolt the complete transaxle unit and remove it from the car to be able to perform that service. It seemed like they could have come up with a different way to do that. And you'll never guess where the battery is in the Ford GT. It's completely in the front nacelle of the car, which is basically underneath here. And with a little bit of work, you can remove it. They use a lithium-ion battery that only lasts about 5 years, and 2018 was that many ago. Ford insists on using the tiniest little O-rings on the zero pressure to and from lines, feed and return lines to the oil tank that's on the Ford GT. It's about 10 quarts or so capacity, much like the Z06 and other dry sump cars. But how they actually seal them is these little tiny O-rings, which can get bisected just like that. So we're going to put, we got the original Ford GT O-rings to put in it. I'm not at all happy with them, so we're going to use some that are slightly larger. Again, these are not under pressure. This is just simply a gravity feed and a return for the oil system. So in our updates on our Ford GT project, we have the suspension lift cylinder. So the suspension is basically lifted and lowered under this torsion bar scenario up here. And the single lift cylinder per side can lift the front suspension or pull it down for track mode. So when it pulls down for track mode, it pulls against a heim joint inside a large aluminum CNC billet piece, but the cylinder itself is cast, and what has happened to this cylinder is through repeated uses of track mode in a bad road surface caused some cracks in the cylinder and basically caused the front of the cylinder to expire. If you look on our other videos, we've taken a film of the replacement cylinder, and we're basically going to pull this out, transfer over the solenoid pack and the adapters for the different lines, and then we should be back in business. This was a car that was definitely devised and assembled to be put together once and never to be taken apart ever again. So this is Steve from Panavia Ford GT Land, playing with hydraulics.